Listen up, get ready, I'm not gonna take no more. There's a revolution, a revelation going on in my soul. Buckle up, get ready, we're not gonna sit back.
Okay, all you listeners to Live from the Heartland, this is the final segment of our show. We've got an old friend coming on to talk about his new book, the one and only Barry Pearce. Hello to you, Barry.
Hey, Mike, how are you?
It's good. You know, we met through Russ Bradford, and I've always known that you were some kind of a writer. And the newest thing all of a sudden is you have a new book out. You have a book signing and a little fiesta around that whole event, and that'll be at Martyrs at 3855 North Lincoln Avenue on Saturday, the 15th at 1 p.m.
Yes.
And I unfortunately won't be there because I've got another event I committed to, but I'm really excited about your new book. Antonia Nelson says of your book, Pearce renders contemporary Chicago in loving and brutal complexity from a myriad of vivid voices. And in his own stylish manner, Pearce pulls off, again and again, dazzling plot lines that deeply satisfy. I love reading this book. And I have another quote that I'll read at the end, but how about you telling us about your book? It's called The Plan of Chicago.
It is. The Plan of Chicago, A City in Stories. So the idea was to try to capture all of Chicago, which is kind of impossible, but I thought I'd do the best I could. So it's 9 stories set in 9 different neighborhoods, and each of the neighborhoods is labeled. So there's South Shore and Lincoln Park, Rogers Park, near and dear to your heart, Mike, and other neighborhoods. And the stories are linked, so some characters overlap here and there. But yeah, that was the idea, to try to capture. So that, you know, about half the point of view characters are men, about half are women. There are immigrants from Ireland and Somalia and Poland, you name it, just from everywhere, black and white and brown, Mexican, Puerto Rican. And I just really wanted to try to give a flavor of the entire scope of the city and try to capture it, even though I knew that would be impossible to completely do.
Well, what inspired you to write this book?
Well, I grew up in Chicago. It's really, apart from stints in New Mexico and, you know, I've spent a fair amount of time in Ireland, but really it's the only place I've really put down roots and lived. And I've always been obsessed with the city. I've always loved the city. And to me, the great thing about Chicago is its diversity, just the breadth of stuff. You know, you can experience the entire world here. Over the summer, I was living in Albany Park, and just every block, you know, there's the Mexican bakery and the Persian restaurant, and then the Korean place and the store from where. So it's just like, to me, the entire world is here. And so I've always been obsessed with it. And I've always been obsessed with not just the great things about Chicago, like that diversity, but also some of the divisions that keep us apart, you know, whether those are racial or ethnic or class oriented. So the book was sort of, and the idea was to explore all of that.
Well, how long have you been working on it? I mean, I knew you were working on a book. I knew you used to edit a magazine.
Yeah.
But I sort of knew you were, you know, a writer, and our good friend Russ Bradford, also a writer and a former basketball coach. You guys are pals, and he's always been talking about your work. Give us a little more about how long you've been doing it.
Yeah, man, it's been a long time, longer than I care to remember. I mean, I've been writing these stories. Some of these stories I started the oldest story 25 years ago, maybe. But I wasn't working on the book that whole time. I was working on other things as well. And I don't know when, maybe 10 or 15 years ago, even the idea for the book, really, that each one would be set in a different neighborhood and they would be linked in this way, came to me. So, I mean, let's say 20 years. I've been working on it for a very long time.
What's your reaction to guys like the current president of the country bad-mouthing our wonderful city?
Who shall remain nameless. I like that we don't have to mention his name. You know, it's just so disheartening and a little perplexing. Like anyone who lives in, we have our problems, sure, but anyone who lives here knows that everything that's being said about Chicago from Washington now is pretty much BS. I mean, the idea that this is some sort of war zone and we need troops in the streets and they need to go hard, it's just all ridiculous. And just, I mean, my parents are immigrants. I grew up surrounded by immigrants. Anyone who's lived in Chicago any length of time knows that immigrants are here to make a living, to feed their families. They want the same exact things everybody wants. And they built this city. You know, that's another inspiration for the book. My dad was a carpenter. And as a kid, he would take me on jobs. He worked in every skyscraper downtown, which is another source of inspiration really for the book. And everybody on those job sites was an immigrant. You know, they were Polish, they were Mexican, Venezuelan, European. That's who built this city. Mike, I give architecture tours also at the Chicago Architecture Center. And I'm struck on those tours. More than half of the architects I talk about on those tours are foreign. You know, they're from Berlin and Bangladesh and Canada and Europe. And so it's just really short-sighted. And I think this was a country that even with, you know, when I didn't vote for Ronald Reagan, I probably didn't agree with him on 95% of what he had to say. But even someone like Ronald Reagan, this icon of the right, understood the value of immigration and immigrants. And it's really unfortunate to me. It feels like a major wrong turn for the country to have this rhetoric that demonizes immigrants these days.
Have you written any other books? Have you written any other pieces that people might want to hear about?
Yes, I've written other books. No, none that people would want to hear about. I ghostwrite. That's kind of my main gig these days to pay the rent. I ghostwrite books. And a lot of those books, you know, I do whatever comes along. So I've done books on education and demographics and marriage, none of which I know much about. But about half of those books have been business books, just because that's who will pay me. I don't have no passion for business, but it's just what has come along. So I've written well over a dozen books as a ghostwriter. So my name is not on any of these, but this is my first book of fiction. It's the first book with my name on it.
When do you write, Barry? Do you stay up late at night? Do you write in the morning? What's anytime? You got a method, a system?
Yeah, not often enough is the first answer. Especially lately, I've just been so busy. I have bad habits. Like if there are any young writers out there listening, I am probably the worst possible role model for that. I kind of really need a good stretch. So if I don't have at least 6 hours, but preferably 8 to work on fiction, I can't get much done. It just takes me that long to really sink in. So the nice thing about the ghostwriting is I'll be working for 6-7 months or whatever, and then I'll often have a month or 2 or sometimes 3 off, and I can just focus on fiction then for a long stretch. So that's when I tend to get my writing done. These guys, I so admire these guys. You know, like Scott Turow apparently wrote his first book, which became a huge blockbuster, on the train, coming on the train from the North Shore into the city. And like, if I wish I could snatch a half hour here or there, but it's not in the cards for me.
The book is coming out on Saturday. It's being released, right?
Yes.
And who is the publisher?
It's a small publisher out of Wisconsin. They're associated with the University of Wisconsin, called Cornerstone Press. And man, they've just been really great. They enlist a lot of student labor, and they do a lot kind of guerrilla marketing stuff. And they've just been really nimble. Like, I know your daughter, Casey Blue, works for a major publisher. But Cornerstone, tiny little Cornerstone, you know, this is what they call the ARC, the advanced review copy. And since this came out, like at the very last minute, they changed up all of the, not all of them, but a lot of the quotes or blurbs on the back, just because good reviews started coming out, and they just at very last minute were able to slide those in. I don't know if a bigger publisher could have done that, you know, so I've really been happy with the little guy.
No, that's really good to hear. Did you have an agent on this, or do you?
I didn't with Cornerstone. I went directly to them, but I've been flirting with agents for, you know, a decade now, and just found it really disheartening. Mike, I'm not good at the business part of this, you know, like it's just Russ could tell you about this better, because Russ is actually pretty good at the business part, and he, you know, tried agent after agent. We have the same sob stories of people stringing us along. You know, I had one agent who I was sort of with for maybe 18 months, and then she just stopped returning my emails, you know, and that's typical. I tell that story to writers and they're like, oh yeah, that's what happens. not like they emailed you and said, I don't think this is working out for us. Just stop replying, you know.
Barry Pearce, what's your next project? You ready for one?
I am. I'm well into another collection of short stories, and that is also a collection of linked pieces, all focused on architecture. And so they involve like people like Frank Lloyd Wright and Louis Sullivan, Daniel Burnham are characters in some of those stories. And so it's also fairly Chicago focused, but the stories are linked by architecture rather than having overlapping characters. And then I'm working on a novel too, which is about a family of Irish-speaking Irish immigrants who come to America in the 50s. And that's about all I can say about that one at this point. But
well, I'm going to read this other quote from Stuart Dybeck about your book, and then we'll plug the event for Saturday afternoon. The power of Pearce's book rises from the foundational sense of Chicago as a city of neighborhoods. Neighborhoods is the level where the great urban themes, race, ethnicity, minority culture, assimilation, inequality, democracy, the American dream, that elevate the work of writers like Algren, Brooks, Bellow, Turkle, Cisneros, and Kotlowitz have been expressed, a lineage to which this book belongs. So that's a pretty heavy rap. Pretty good. It's going to be a great seller, I'm sure. Tell us about the event at Martyrs Saturday afternoon, the 15th of November.
Yes, Saturday afternoon, the 15th, 1 p.m., 1 to 4 p.m. I'll do a short reading. I keep the reading pretty short. There will be books for sale from the Bookseller, great indie bookstore here in Lincoln Square. And there'll be lots of live music. So the Boyles, great Chicago folky band playing Irish music and other music. Mike Austin, Jim Conway, Jack Callahan will be playing, and drinks available, of course. So should be really fun. All ages show, free. So come on out.
Barry, I want to thank you for coming on. You're one of my favorite writers now.
Thanks, Mikey. You're one of my favorite writers, and I thoroughly enjoyed your book about the border that I just picked up at your reading lately.
Right on. Okay.